I'm 32 years old, and I've been married to David for 5 years. Every Christmas, his family treats my handmade gifts like embarrassing charity donations while showing off their expensive store-bought presents. This year, they finally learned what my creations are actually worth. My name is Clara, and I'm a master craftsperson specializing in traditional techniques that have been passed down through generations. I work with precious metals, rare woods, hand-dyed textiles, and ancient restoration methods. My studio is in our home's basement, where I spend countless hours perfecting pieces that museums and private collectors pay premium prices for. David knows what I do and supports me completely, but his family has never bothered to understand my work. David's family is wealthy in that new money way, where everything is about brand names and price tags and showing off. His mother, Patricia, collects designer handbags. His father, Robert, drives luxury cars he changes every year. His sister Amanda works in finance and never stops talking about her salary and her penthouse and her vacation home. His brother Michael owns a chain of car dealerships and makes sure everyone knows how successful he is. I come from a different background entirely. My grandmother taught me traditional crafts when I was young. I studied fine arts and historical preservation in college. I apprenticed with master artisans across 3 continents. What I create isn't mass-produced or branded. It's one-of-a-kind work that requires skill most people don't even know exists anymore. Before we start, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you're new, make sure to like and subscribe to become part of the Tales Teller family. Your support keeps these amazing stories coming. Our first Christmas together as a married couple, I made personalized gifts for everyone. For Patricia, I created a hand-embroidered silk shawl using techniques from 16th century Italy. It took me 80 hours and used silk threads I'd imported from a specialty supplier in Lyon. For Robert, the first restored and customized a vintage fountain pen using traditional goldsmithing techniques. For Amanda, I made a leather portfolio with hand-tooled designs and gold leaf accents. For Michael, I crafted a wooden watch box from reclaimed walnut with hidden compartments and brass inlays. The reactions when they opened my gifts told me everything I needed to know about how they saw me. Patricia pulled out the shawl and held it up with this polite but disappointed smile. "Oh, how lovely," she said in that tone people use when they're trying to be nice about something they hate. "Did you make this yourself, Clara?" I explained the technique and the historical significance and the hours of work. She folded it carefully and said, "That's very sweet, dear," before setting it aside and moving on to the Gucci bag Amanda had bought her. Robert looked at the fountain pen for maybe 5 seconds before saying, "Thanks, Clara," very thoughtful, and putting it back in the box. He spent the next 10 minutes gushing over the golf club set Michael gave him that cost $3,000. Amanda actually laughed when she opened the portfolio. "This is so cute," she said. "Did you make this in your little craft room?" I tried explaining the leather working process and the gold leaf application, but she'd already moved on talking about the designer watch her boyfriend bought her. Michael was the worst. He opened the watch box and immediately said, "Oh, handmade, how nice," with this condescending smile. "My girlfriend makes stuff like this too. Sells it at farmers markets." His girlfriend looked embarrassed, but Michael kept going. "It's a hobby, right? Good to have hobbies." Then he showed off the $500 bottle of whiskey he'd bought for Robert, and everyone oohed and awed appropriately. I sat there feeling about 2 inches tall while David squeezed my hand supportively under the table. Later in the car, he apologized for his family. "They don't understand art or craftsmanship," he said. "They only value things if they have designer labels and big price tags. Don't let them make you feel bad. Your gifts were beautiful and meaningful, and that's what matters." But it did make me feel bad. Really bad. I'd put my heart and skills into those gifts, and they'd been dismissed as cute hobby projects. The next year, I tried again. Made different items using different techniques. Same response. Year 3, same thing. By year 4, I'd started to dread Christmas with David's family because I knew whatever I made would be treated like something from a children's craft fair while they exchanged luxury items and compared price tags. This year, though, something changed, and I decided to approach the gift-giving situation from a completely different angle. In October, David's company transferred him to a new position that required us to attend more social events with wealthy clients and collectors. At one of these events, I met a woman named Catherine who owned several art galleries. We got talking about my work and she asked to see my portfolio. 2 days later, she came to my studio and spent 3 hours examining my pieces, asking about techniques and materials and training. At the end of her visit, Catherine made me an offer. She wanted to represent my work in her galleries. She believed my pieces would sell extremely well to the right clientele who appreciated fine craftsmanship and historical techniques. She suggested we start with a small collection and see how the market responded. I agreed, and within 6 weeks I had 8 pieces in her main gallery. They sold within 2 weeks. Every single one. For prices that shocked me, even though Catherine had warned me what collectors would pay. A hand-embroidered silk scarf similar to the one I'd made Patricia sold for $8,500. A leather journal with hand-tooled designs went for $6,200. A restored vintage pen like Robert's sold for $12,000 to a collector who specialized in writing instruments. A wooden box similar to Michael's went for $15,000. Catherine called me thrilled. "Your work is exactly what my clients want," she said. Authentic craftsmanship, historical techniques, one-of-a-kind pieces. I have a waiting list now. People who saw the first collection want to commission custom pieces. This could become very lucrative, Clara, if you're interested in scaling up production. I was stunned. For years, David's family had treated my work like cheap hobby crafts, and here was a respected gallery owner telling me collectors were willing to pay thousands for pieces exactly like what I'd been giving away as Christmas gifts. For Patricia, I made another silk shawl, this time using even more complex embroidery patterns and rarer silk threads. For Robert, another fountain pen, this time restoring a vintage Waterman and customizing it with 18K gold bands. For Amanda, a new leather portfolio with more intricate tooling and genuine gold leaf. For Michael, a larger watch box from rare burled wood with more complex hidden mechanisms. I wrapped each gift beautifully but simply. No hint of their actual value. Just nice paper and ribbons. David asked if I was sure I wanted to give such valuable pieces to his family after how they'd treated my gifts before. I told him I had a plan and to trust me. He looked skeptical but agreed to go along with whatever I had in mind. Christmas Eve arrived and we drove to Patricia and Robert's house for the annual family celebration. The living room was already full of elaborately wrapped gifts with designer labels visible. Tiffany, Cartier, Louis Vuitton, Rolex. The usual display of conspicuous consumption. My simple wrapped packages looked modest and homemade by comparison, which was exactly what I wanted. But what happened when they opened my gifts this year would change everything about how his family saw me. We started the gift exchange after dinner. Amanda went first, showing off the Cartier bracelet her boyfriend bought her and making sure everyone saw the price tag she accidentally left on. $4,800. Patricia opened a Burberry coat from Robert and modeled it for everyone. Michael gave his girlfriend a Louis Vuitton bag and announced loudly that it was the limited edition one that cost over $3,000. Then it was time for my gifts. I handed them out one by one and watched as David's family opened them with those same polite but unenthusiastic expressions I'd seen every year. Patricia pulled out the silk. Robert opened his pen and said, "Nice work, Clara," very detailed without really looking at it. Amanda laughed at her portfolio again. "You really love making these, don't you?" she said like she was talking to a child. Michael didn't even pretend to be interested. "Cool," he said, setting the watch box aside unopened to show off the designer wallet he'd bought for David. I waited, smiled, sipped my wine. David was watching me with this concerned expression like he was worried I was going to be hurt again by their dismissiveness. But I wasn't hurt. I was waiting for the right moment. That moment came when Patricia was showing off her new handbag collection to Amanda and mentioned she'd been invited to a charity auction at Catherine's gallery next month. "Oh," I said casually. "Catherine's gallery? I know Catherine. She represents my work, actually." The room went quiet. Patricia looked at me confused. "Your work? What do you mean represents your work?" I explained that several of my pieces were currently in Catherine's main gallery and that I had a waiting list of clients wanting to commission custom work. Patricia's expression shifted from confusion to skepticism. "That's nice, dear," she said in a tone that made clear she didn't believe me. "Catherine represents very high-end artists. I'm sure she's just being polite by displaying a few of your pieces." Actually, I replied she sold my entire first collection in 2 weeks and is asking me to create more. The pieces sold for anywhere from $6,000 to $15,000 each. The silence that followed was absolute. Amanda actually stopped mid-sentence talking about her bonus. Michael's girlfriend looked up from her phone. Robert set down his drink. "What did you say?" Patricia asked slowly. "You're joking," Amanda said flatly. "Nobody pays that much for handmade crafts." "They're not crafts," I corrected. "They're fine art pieces using historical techniques and rare materials. Collectors pay premium prices for authentic craftsmanship. Catherine has clients who specifically seek out work like mine." The skepticism on their faces was obvious. Patricia actually laughed. "Clara dear, I'm sure your work is lovely, but those prices seem rather exaggerated." I pulled out my phone and opened Catherine's gallery website. Scrolled to the sold collection section. Held it up so they could see. There was a photo of a silk scarf nearly identical to the one I'd just given Patricia, with a description of the technique and a price tag of $8,500 marked as sold. There was a leather journal like Amanda's listed at $6,200. A wooden box like Michael's at $15,000. Patricia took my phone with shaking hands and stared at the screen. "This can't be right," she whispered. "Nobody pays this much for four." She couldn't finish the sentence. "For crafts," I finished for her. "These aren't crafts, Patricia. They're museum-quality pieces created using techniques most artisans don't even know exist anymore. The silk threads alone for that shawl cost over $400. The embroidery took 120 hours using patterns from 16th century Italian nobility." What nobody knew yet would make this revelation even more shocking for David's family. Robert reached for my phone and scrolled through the gallery page. His face had gone pale. "The pen," he said quietly. "The one you gave me last year." "Was that?" I nodded. "Similar to the one that sold for $12,000, yes." Michael finally opened the watch box I'd given him this year. Really looked at it. The wood gleamed under the lights. He found the hidden compartments I'd built into the design. Pressed the subtle mechanisms that revealed secret drawers. "This is," he started, then stopped. "This is incredible," he finally said. "You made this?" "I've been making pieces like that for years," I replied. "That particular box took me 6 weeks. The wood is rare burled walnut I sourced from a specialty supplier. The brass inlays are hand-fitted and the hidden mechanisms are based on 18th century Japanese puzzle boxes." "How much would this sell for?" Amanda asked quietly. Her condescending tone was completely gone. I considered it. Given the size and complexity, probably around $18,000, maybe $20,000 for the right buyer. Catherine has a client who collects wooden boxes who would likely pay top dollar for that one. The room went completely silent again. Michael was staring at the box in his hands like he was holding a bomb. Patricia had gone from skeptical to shocked to something that looked almost like panic. "The shawl," she said, holding it up with suddenly careful hands. "This one?" "Similar to the $8,500 one," I confirmed, but actually more complex. "I used rarer silk threads and added additional pattern elements. That one would probably retail around $11,000, maybe $12,000. Patricia made a sound like all the air had left her lungs. She held the shawl like it might disintegrate. Nobody seemed to know what to say. David was trying not to smile. He knew exactly what I'd been doing and was clearly enjoying watching his family's reactions. Robert cleared his throat. "Clara, I think we owe you an apology. We didn't understand. We thought you were just doing crafts as a hobby, not creating actual valuable art." "That's because you never bothered to ask," I said calmly. "You never asked about my training or my techniques or what goes into my work. You saw handmade and assumed amateur. You saw that I worked from home and assumed it wasn't a real career." Amanda was examining her portfolio with new eyes, running her fingers over the tooled leather and gold leaf. The boyfriend who'd been ignoring everything suddenly leaned over interested. "Babe," he said to Amanda, "do you know how much that's worth?" She shook her head, still stunned. I smiled. "Based on similar pieces, probably around $9,000, maybe $10,000 with the gold leaf work. It's genuine 23-karat gold, by the way. Not gold paint. Actual gold applied using traditional gilding techniques." Amanda's boyfriend whistled low. "And you just gave that away as a Christmas gift?" "I give thoughtful gifts to people I care about," I replied. The monetary value is secondary to the craftsmanship and meaning. Unlike some people, I don't choose gifts based on price tags and brand names. The dig was subtle, but everyone caught it. Patricia looked genuinely ashamed. Michael was still holding his watch box like he was afraid to put it down. What happened next showed me that maybe some people really can learn from their mistakes when confronted with undeniable truth. Patricia stood up carefully, still holding the shawl. "Clara," she said slowly. "I don't know what to say. We've been treating your incredible gifts like they were nothing. Like you were just making little craft projects. I feel absolutely terrible." She paused, clearly struggling with emotion. "These gifts you've given us over the years. The pen and the portfolio and the watch box from previous years. Do you still have them?" I asked. "Or did you donate them or throw them away?" The guilty looks on their faces told me everything. Robert admitted he'd put the pen in a drawer and forgotten about it. Amanda confessed she'd given her portfolio to a coworker. Michael said his watch box from 2 years ago was in his garage somewhere. Patricia had donated the first shawl to a charity shop. Each admission hit like a small bomb. David's hand found mine and squeezed gently. I felt the familiar hurt rising, but pushed it down. "That's unfortunate," I said quietly. "Those pieces represented months of my time and thousands of dollars in materials and expertise. But they also represented my attempts to connect with you through my craft. To share something meaningful. You threw that away because you couldn't see past your own assumptions about what has value." The shame on their faces was evident. Patricia was crying. Robert looked crushed. Amanda couldn't meet my eyes. Michael just sat there holding his current watch box and probably calculating how much money he'd literally thrown in the garage. David's mother finally spoke. "How do we fix this?" she asked. "How do we make this right?" "You can't," I said honestly. "Those pieces are gone. But going forward, you could start by respecting what I do. By understanding that value doesn't always come with designer labels and price tags. By recognizing that craftsmanship and skill and tradition have worth even when they're not marketed by luxury brands." The room stayed quiet. Then Robert spoke up. "You're absolutely right," he said. The others echoed his apology. Even Michael, who'd been the most condescending, managed a genuine-sounding sorry. I looked at David, who gave me a small nod of support. This was my moment to decide how to move forward. "I accept your apologies," I said finally. "And I hope this is a learning moment for all of us. About not judging things we don't understand. About respecting different forms of expertise and craftsmanship. About valuing thoughtfulness over price tags." Patricia nodded vigorously, clearly desperate to make amends. "We will," she promised. "We absolutely will. Is there anything we can do? Any way we can support your work?" "Actually," I said, thinking quickly. "Catherine's Gallery is hosting an exhibition of my work in February. You're all welcome to attend if you'd like to see what I do in a professional context. To understand the level I work at." Patricia immediately said they'd all be there. Robert agreed enthusiastically. Amanda and Michael nodded. Even their partners, who'd witnessed this whole awkward exchange, seemed interested. The rest of the evening was different from any previous Christmas with David's family. They asked questions about my work. Real questions about techniques and training and materials. They wanted to understand the processes. Patricia asked about the embroidery techniques I used. Robert wanted to know about fountain pen restoration. Amanda asked about leatherworking. Michael was fascinated by the hidden mechanisms in the wooden boxes. For the first time in 5 years, I felt like they actually saw me as someone with valuable expertise instead of just David's wife who did cute crafts in the basement. It was vindicating and emotional and, honestly, a little overwhelming. David kept catching my eye across the room with this proud smile that made my heart full. When we left that night, Patricia hugged me at the door, holding on longer than usual. "Thank you," she said quietly, for continuing to give us your beautiful work even when we didn't appreciate it. You're a better person than we deserve." I hugged her back and said we all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them. But the real test of whether they'd learned anything would come in the following weeks. The next day, Patricia called me. She'd gone to the charity shop where she'd donated my first shawl and bought it back. It cost her $15, which she found both hilarious and horrifying given what it was actually worth. She asked if I could teach her about the techniques I'd used. We set up a time for her to visit my studio. Robert called 2 days later. He'd found the fountain pen in his desk drawer and wanted to know how to properly care for it. I walked him through maintenance techniques and recommended a pen collectors group he could join to learn more. Amanda tracked down the coworker she'd given the portfolio to and bought it back, offering the woman $200 for it. The coworker was confused but happy with the unexpected cash. Amanda brought the portfolio to my studio and asked me to explain every aspect of its creation. She took notes. She asked about apprenticeship programs and historical preservation. She seemed genuinely interested in understanding the craft. Michael found his watch box in the garage exactly where he'd left it, still in its original wrapping. He cleaned it carefully and brought it to my studio to ask about the wood and the mechanisms. He ended up commissioning a larger piece for his office. A desk organizer with hidden compartments using similar techniques. He paid my full commission rate without hesitation. The family group chat that I'd been added to but usually ignored became active, with people sharing articles about traditional crafts and asking questions about techniques. Patricia found a documentary about silk making and sent it to everyone. Robert shared an article about fountain pen collecting. They were trying, and that meant something. February arrived and Catherine's gallery hosted my exhibition. 20 pieces representing different techniques and historical periods. The opening night was invitation only for serious collectors and art enthusiasts. I was nervous, but Catherine assured me everything would be perfect. David wore his best suit and stayed by my side, providing quiet support. My in-laws arrived early, dressed formally and looking slightly out of place among the art collectors and museum curators. But they came, and that mattered. They walked through the exhibition slowly, reading every description card and examining each piece with new eyes. I watched Patricia stop in front of a silk wall hanging similar to the shawls I'd made her. She stood there for 10 minutes just looking at it, studying the stitches and patterns. The price tag read $25,000, and it sold within the first hour to a private collector. Robert found the display of restored fountain pens and spent 20 minutes talking to another collector about ink flow and nib flexibility. Amanda stood in front of a leather-bound journal asking the gallery assistant questions about the tooling process. Michael examined a large wooden cabinet with complex hidden compartments, taking photos and making sketches. Catherine approached me midway through the evening. "Your family seems very engaged," she observed. I explained the situation briefly. How they dismissed my work for years until learning what it was actually worth. Catherine laughed. "Nothing teaches appreciation faster than a price tag," she said. "But I think they're learning something deeper now. They're starting to understand the work itself, not just its market value." She was right. Over the course of the evening, I overheard my in-laws talking to other guests about craftsmanship and historical techniques, using terminology they'd learned from me, defending the value of traditional methods. Patricia got into a passionate discussion with a museum curator about the importance of preserving historical skills. Robert exchanged contact information with a fountain pen collector. By the end of the night, 15 of my 20 pieces had sold for a total of over $180,000. Catherine was ecstatic. The gallery took their commission, but I was still looking at a substantial income from a single exhibition. More importantly, I had a waiting list of commission work that would keep me busy for the next year. David's family stayed until the very end, helping pack up the remaining pieces and celebrating with champagne. Patricia made a toast. "To Clara," she said, raising her glass. "An extraordinary artist who had the patience to keep sharing her gifts with people too foolish to appreciate them. We're lucky to have you in our family, and we promise to do better." Everyone drank to that. Even Michael, who'd been the most resistant to changing his attitude, seemed genuinely moved by the evening. Later, he pulled me aside and said I was an idiot, Clara. I had an $18,000 piece of art in my garage, and I didn't even know it. I won't make that mistake again. Thank you for not giving up on us. The dynamic in David's family shifted after that night in ways I never expected. Patricia became one of my biggest advocates. She joined the board of a local arts foundation that supported traditional craftspeople. She used her social connections to introduce my work to potential clients and collectors. She started her own small hobby, learning basic embroidery, not to create anything valuable, but to appreciate the skill involved in what I did. Robert began collecting vintage fountain pens seriously. He joined collector groups and attended pen shows. He always made sure people knew his daughter-in-law was a master restorer and sent clients my way. He kept the pen I'd restored for him in a special case in his office and showed it to anyone who'd listen, explaining the techniques I'd used. Amanda enrolled in a weekend course on traditional bookbinding. She said she wanted to understand at least one aspect of craftsmanship from the inside. She started following my career closely, attending every exhibition and bringing friends and colleagues who might be interested in commissioning work. She used her finance connections to help me structure my business more efficiently. Michael became an unexpected ally. He commissioned 3 more pieces for his car dealerships, incorporating hidden compartments into furniture for his offices. He told every wealthy client about my work. Several ended up becoming regular customers. He still talked about money and success, but now he included craftsmanship and artistry in his definition of value. The next Christmas was completely different from any that had come before. We gathered again at Patricia and Robert's house, but this time there was genuine excitement when it came time for my gifts. I'd made each person something special using techniques they'd learned to appreciate. For Patricia, a small embroidered piece she could frame. For Robert, a custom pen stand for his growing collection. For Amanda, a leather bookmark with her initials in gold leaf. For Michael, a puzzle box with mechanisms even more complex than before. They opened their gifts with reverence. Actually looked at them. Asked questions about the techniques and materials. Appreciated the time and skill involved. Patricia cried. Robert immediately put his pen stand on display. Amanda took photos to share on social media, explaining what the gold leaf process involved. Michael spent 20 minutes trying to solve the puzzle box. Amanda presented me with a business consultation package from a firm that specialized in helping artists scale their operations. Michael's gift was a commissioned display case for my studio made by another master craftsperson he'd researched and contacted on his own. I was overwhelmed. These weren't just expensive gifts. They were thoughtful gifts that showed they understood my work and wanted to support it. David was grinning, watching his family finally treat me with the respect I deserved. Your family has come a long way, he whispered. I nodded, unable to speak past the emotion in my throat. That evening, after the gifts were opened and dinner was finished, Patricia asked me to come to her study. She had something to show me. We walked to the small room where she kept her personal items, and she opened a cabinet. Inside, carefully displayed, was every piece I'd ever made for her. The shawls, an embroidered handkerchief from 3 Christmases ago, even the silk scarf she'd bought back from the charity shop. I'm creating a collection, she said quietly, of your work. Not because it's valuable, though it is, but because each piece represents your artistry and our family connection. I want my grandchildren someday to see these and understand that their grandmother was lucky enough to receive original works from a master craftwoman. I want them to appreciate real value, not just price tags. I hugged her then, and we both cried a little. 5 years of hurt and dismissal seemed to dissolve in that moment. She'd learned. They'd all learned. And while it had taken a dramatic revelation to open their eyes, the important thing was that they'd been willing to change. Now, 8 months after that first confrontation, my relationship with David's family is stronger than it's ever been. My work continues to thrive. Catherine's gallery represents me exclusively, and I have more commissioned work than I can handle. I've had to hire 2 apprentices to help with the demand. My pieces have been featured in major art publications, and I've been invited to demonstrate techniques at museums and art schools. The financial success is wonderful, but what matters more is that my skills and knowledge are being recognized and valued. David's family attends every exhibition. They bring friends. They promote my work in their circles. They've become genuine supporters, not because they're obligated to, but because they actually understand and appreciate what I do now. Patricia volunteers at the Arts Foundation. Robert is writing articles about fountain pen restoration for collector magazines. Amanda is on the board of a craft preservation nonprofit. Michael commissioned a major piece for his corporate headquarters. Last month, the family gathered for a casual dinner at our house. As I served dessert, Patricia said, "You know, Clara, we owe you more than just apologies. We owe you thanks. What you did revealing the value of your work the way you did could have been vindictive. You could have humiliated us. But instead you educated us. You opened our eyes not just to your artistry, but to our own shallow values. We were measuring worth by price tags and brand names, she continued. We couldn't see that the most valuable things you gave us were created with skill and time and love. You taught us to appreciate craftsmanship and tradition and expertise. You made us better people. Thank you for that. Everyone at the table nodded in agreement. Even the partners and friends who'd witnessed our family drama. I looked around at these people who'd caused me so much hurt, but who'd also been willing to learn and change. Nobody's perfect, I said. We all have blind spots. The important thing is being willing to recognize them and grow. You've all done that. Our family is stronger now because we had this difficult conversation. David squeezed my hand under the table. Later that night, as we cleaned up, he said, I'm proud of you. For handling everything with such grace. For giving them a chance to make it right. I'm proud of them too for actually taking that chance. I leaned against him, feeling content. Your family's not so bad, I teased. They just needed proper education about the value of handmade gifts. Looking back, I don't regret the years of hurt and dismissal because they led to this moment of genuine connection and understanding. My in-laws learned that value isn't always measured in price tags. That craftsmanship and tradition and skill have worth beyond what any brand name can offer. That the most meaningful gifts come from the heart and hands of people who care enough to create something unique. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's patience. It's continuing to be yourself and do your work until others finally open their eyes. It's giving people the chance to grow even when they don't deserve it. The satisfaction I feel now isn't from having proven them wrong. It's from watching them genuinely appreciate artistry and from knowing our family relationships are built on real respect instead of obligation. My handmade gifts are still handmade. They still take months to create and use rare materials and traditional techniques. But now when I give them to David's family, they understand what they're receiving. They treasure them not just because of monetary value, but because they've learned to see the artistry and love woven into every piece. And that understanding is worth more than any price tag could ever show.